Hello. So, I have some sewing to do, hand sewing, which can be a little bit weird because I cannot fully watch a show or a series or whatever because I need to, check out that I'm not messing everything up. But at the same time, it's kind of boring to just sit there and do it. So I thought, what if we just put together two things at once? So I decided to use the time in which I am sewing something to also talk about something. And in particular, I wanted to talk about the immigrant experience, and of course, in particular, my own experience. Long story short, I have my ruana, which is made of wool. However, me and wool don't get along too well, so I have decided to put a layer of cotton, simple white fabric on one side, so when it's over you, it doesn't itch that much. I'm not doing anything particular, just a simple side stitching. It's nothing fancy, just yeah. So, I realized a few years ago that my position as an immigrant is a very particular one. This because, statistically speaking, you usually have either adults that move from one country to another. So, you're talking about people that are usually way over 18 years old, in the 20s. Yeah, you have some cases, but usually also older. Or you have also the case of the adults that have kids with them. Usually we're talking about toddlers, babies even. My position, however, was different because I moved when I was like less than a month away from 16. This is important because, well, developmental years go from 0 to even your 20s. So, by that time, I was still kind of in the developmental years. And when I moved, sure, I was kind of grown, but I wasn't fully an adult. In fact, one of the first things that I did the moment I arrived was to go to school because there is mandatory school. And also because I needed to finish school. I did what in Colombia it's the first years of high school, but then I stopped. And there's also the fact that education system and levels and all of that changes from country to country. So I basically arrived with, look, these are my votes, what I got in my school, and based on that, I still had to go to school, and there was still a lot of kind of an issue because when I arrived, I did not speak Italian at all. I could hardly even understand it, but at the same time, it was very important that I, kind of knew what was going on, but I didn't. But I had to also kind of make decisions, important decisions, and I'll tell you why. As a quick rundown, in Colombia, the education system is basically 2 years of elementary, 5 years of primary, 6 years of high school. Basically, you go from kind of 5 years old, it kind of also depends, and you go all the way to when you are 16, almost 18. And during these years, everyone does basically the same thing. There is no big changes. And when you do the last year of school, which we call 11th year, basically, we just count from 1 to 11, from primary to high school, it's all from 1 to 11. And then you do an exam. Everyone does the exact same thing. These exams are called, by the way, ICFES. I mean, yeah, there are certain schools, and I actually attended one of those for a while, that focus on certain subjects and they do a little more work on certain areas. But overall, everyone at the end does the same thing. Like everyone makes the same exam at the end of the school experience. In Italy, however, it's different because you have, okay, I called it earlier elementary, primary, high school, mainly because I don't know any other way to translate it. That's kind of a very direct translation. In Italy, you have 5 years of elementary, 3 years of primary, which is actually translated directly middle school, and then you have high school for 5 years. Now, the fun thing and the interesting thing is that when I arrived, I couldn't go to middle school because I was already too old for middle school. So I had to, for certain, go to high school. But here, the high schools are slightly different. This is because during your last year of middle school or primary school, you have to decide which high school you go to. It's not just about where it is placed, but what is kind of the general subject that you're interested in. Even since I graduated, it has changed so much. You have so many new names and there's so many new categories that you can go to. The point of these schools is that yes, there are certain subjects that everyone does the same, but each high school focuses on some things. I attended three different ones. The first one was a linguistic one that had, besides the usual things like math and some science and things like that, it basically focused on German, Spanish and English. I started with that one because at the time the principal thought that because I had Spanish and English down, it would be slightly easier for me to learn Italian while I was doing it. However, I changed that, which sometimes I do feel kind of, I mean, I would have in some cases have liked to stay there because it had a lot of interesting subjects. But at the time, I also had in mind to do something slightly different, and so I changed to the scientific school basically. The scientific course has a lot of maths, as you can imagine. It has also a lot of science, and it has physics. Turns out I'm really bad at most of those. But I don't know, I guess I had a lot of high hopes and I thought, I mean, once I do it, if I have to learn the language, at least I'm learning it while doing the subjects that might help me in what I want to do in the future. However, I soon realized that also I wasn't actually sure about what I want to do in the future. Which in the case of Italy makes kind of an issue because you still have to choose. There is no general school. And again, everyone focalizes on certain things. So at the end of the 5 years, you basically have to do, or at least it was there at the time. Now, also because of the whole thing with COVID, it has changed a bit. But you had to do various exams, some of which were general. Everyone does the same because everyone should know the same. But at the same time, you have those that are directly to your own course. Now, I finally then decided that, yeah, it wasn't for me, and I found another course. I was very lucky, actually, that I was able to finally understand the language, speak with someone, a teacher from primary school, that basically made me do what usually kids here do, which is actually kind of see everything there is on the territory, all of my possibilities. And thanks to her, which by the way, thank you so much. I don't even remember her name, but it was very nice. Thanks to that, I was able to find a course that was slightly particular. The reason why it's particular is because the linguistic and the scientific course, as well as many others, are usually focused on subjects, and then you are usually going to go directly to university or college. There are other courses which are more focused on people that are not really interested in that, and they prefer to, the moment they have, the piece of paper that say they went to school, they want to do something right away, they want to work right away. And then my course was slightly particular because it's kind of in between. Basically, I did a professional course, which means that we studied and we did the exam like everybody else, and you can go to university and college. But at the same time, we had some working experience during our last 3 years of school, which is also very important, I think, because I think it is a very interesting experience to be out there, to actually see what the work is and see not only the people you work with, but also all of the aspects of how it is organized. So, as you can see already, the immigrant experience was interesting for me because from people that arrive here and they are adults right away, they don't go to school. They don't have to. I had to go to school, and I, had all these experiences, but at the same time, I didn't attend primary and elementary school. But I did attend high school also in Colombia. So even now, it is so fascinating to think about all of the differences. Some things I do believe that are very fun and nice about the system here in Italy. I do think that it is fascinating that if you have in your mind an idea of what you want to do, then it is better if you can focalize your studies in that. So when you have to do the exams to enter a college or a university or whatever you do, you have a way better understanding of it instead of going back and maybe checking things that you didn't even do during your school time. On the other hand, one of the things that I was also a victim, I guess, of was the fact that unless you know it, then everything is kind of, I guess I'm gonna do this. It becomes a really particular situation because maybe you have your idea of what you want to do. I kind of had it. But then I changed my mind, and that is possible. You can change your mind. You may say, oh, actually, I realize I'm actually not really. I mean, this is fun, but it's not something that I want to do. I want to study and kind of go full working and studying on. So you might want to change it. And you can change the schools. I did. But that also requires a lot of work because, especially going from the scientific to the professional course, by the way, it's a professional social sanitary course, by the way, just putting it out there. I had to do 4 extra exams during that summer because I needed to, I was entering the third year, so I need to do 2 years of the study that they had done that I have never done in my life. So that summer was a lot of work. I had 3 exams on the scientific course just to go to the third year, and then I have the 4 exams to enter the new school. It was a lot. Lucky for me, the some of the subjects were things like music, which was kind of simple, thankfully. And I did had to do an exam of psychology and one on legislation. But lucky for me, again, I kind of like those, so it was fun. Now, a fun fact is that when doing bureaucratic procedures, sometimes they ask you about your education. Now, like I said at the beginning, statistically speaking, you either have kids that are very young, and usually by the time they are adults, they have already gained the citizenship or the whole paperwork, it's kind of still in a different way. I, however, have to go through the usual adult immigrant process, which means that usually people in the offices don't actually expect that I attended school in here. When an adult arrives in Italy and when you are doing your papers, not only your permit to stay, but then there's another extra permit that lasts a little bit longer, and then there's the whole citizenship. You need to start to prove that you know the language. And for them, there are courses. These courses are available for most people, and most people attend them at some point in order to have that certificate that says that they speak Italian. So, funny enough, this is something that happened not long ago. Basically, I was asked that paper and I gave them my high school diploma because it's the most basic one. And they didn't recognize it. It was so funny. It was like, you're missing your paper about, attending school. And I was like, no, it's right there. And funny enough, the school, it's like here around the corner. Like, what? I mean, just, nothing big. It's just interesting to note how statistically it's not very common. And I understand that. I mean, it's not the end of the world. But what I do think it is interesting is because that's one of the reasons why then, after high school, I went to do some extra courses. Now, I didn't attend university or college because I knew the moment I ended school that I stopped. I couldn't go through even just 3 years of having to go and then doing exams. It wasn't for me, really, it wasn't. And also, I have to say this, I was incredibly lucky to be in a position in which I didn't have to choose anymore. It wasn't easy to come to that conclusion, especially because you always have that kind of idea that if you don't go, then your life is wasted. And oh my God, no one's going to allow you to work. You're going to have to do, I don't know what, this kind of mentality. It's always there. But I was very lucky to stand my ground and be like, no, I know it's not going to be for me, regardless of the course I do. None of them are really what I want to do, especially at the moment. So I didn't, and I'm actually way happier. In the meantime, between I found this extra course that I did and I just finished, I actually was able to do some experiences, working experiences here and there, which allowed me to also understand some things about myself, which I think is always a very, very important experience. And when I found this course, basically, it was a course to kind of follow up what I had already done. So I did social sanitary services, which is a very generic thing, yeah, it's about that. It's exactly what you think it could be, just very generic. But I did a sort of specialization, is that a word? On particularly infants assistance and also multiculturalism. I found myself in a moment in which, while I was reading those courses, I was like, oh, this is my experience. Oh, damn. And now that I have finished that course and I did a total of basically 400 hours of working experience in various places, I really find myself very happy with what I'm doing. Because I am basically doing what I kind of would have liked to have. Here's the thing, the immigrant experience is an experience that is also very unique and very interesting. This is one of the reasons why I try to say this is my experience. This is how I, went through these things. I cannot talk for everybody else, absolutely not. But it is interesting to note that sometimes we don't talk about these experiences, even though they can actually help quite a lot. Point being that the immigrant position is a very unique one, and it's not just depending on which country you are from, but it depends of where you are, how you look even. It's important not to pretend that everything is down to the most simple things, and there are so many aspects, there's so many issues that we need to take into account when talking about these things. And I mean, all of this could take me a long time to talk, but I just wanted to talk about my own experience and how they actually showcase quite a lot for the good and for the not that good. For example, the fact that, the people that work at the bureaucratic places are not very accustomed to see that type of paper, it's fine, whatever. It's not that deep. Again, statistically speaking, yeah, sure, I get you, it's fine. The issue rises when it happens when other things, aka based on certain things about you or your position as an immigrant, people make comments or they behave in certain ways. I am pale as a ghost. I know that. But it has been fascinating to me to see and hear when people basically don't question where I might be from, especially if I don't speak and you cannot hear my accent. People don't really think much of me other than another Italian, which I'm not. And working with the public has led me to hearing people saying their thoughts out loud, thinking that I am like them. Which technically I am, in the sense that we're both humans, both deserving of rights, but bureaucratically speaking and in terms of documentation, we are kind of in different positions. And I have heard things of various calibers, yes. I have heard very silly comments, and I also have heard very hard and, not gonna lie, they kind of hit me in particular ways, some of those comments that people make. I actually sometimes write them down on my phone because not because I want to be like, you see, everyone is racist. No, I don't care about it. But because I think it is important, especially now that I work with the public, to try to understand better where does that come from, especially because my area of expertise, if you wish, and the people that I mainly like to and prefer to work with are kids. Like I said, statistically speaking, there are a lot of adults, but a lot of people arrive when they are kids. Not only that, here in Italy, there is the system, it's basically EU sanguinis, which basically means that even if you're born here, if both of your parents are not Italian, you're just not Italian. Which is a whole mess on its own because there's a lot of people and kids that have spent their whole life here. This is the only culture they know and that they are actually, completely aware of, but they are not technically speaking Italian. And it is very often that when those kids grow up, especially if they are POC, they are right away thought out to be immigrants. While I, because I am pale as a ghost, I don't get the same treatment. Which is a clear showcase of racism, xenophobia, and stereotypes. And no, it doesn't mean that everyone here is like that, absolutely not. I have met and I know many people that are not like that. But it is important to be aware of this and be honest about these things. And during one of my working experiences, I was working with little kids, and there was one little kid, family in general, that were all immigrants. But they were very small kids, which means that very probably, and that was kind of the idea of the parents, they are going to stay here for the rest of their lives. But the kids were already in a very fascinating position because they had memories of where they came from, very vivid memories. And when they moved here, there was a lot of issues and it was a very particular situation. But they understood that, yes, this is where we live now, but we come from this country. This is something that some of the classmates had no idea, in the sense that they had no idea that their own parents were from other places of the world. This is because one of the things that a lot of immigrants do, especially first generation immigrants, is to kind of not talk about it too much. And if they have kids that are born in where they are, they try to make them, or in the case of Italy, to Italianize them. They try not to talk too much about the culture. They try to limit what they do at home, and they push more on the go there, go with them, try to fully go with the majority. Basically, you have a lot of people, a lot of parents that know and kind of understand that a lot of these issues are still very much an everyday life issue. And in order to protect their kids, they try to, limit that. But that is a huge loss. Imagine having beautiful cultures from various parts of the world, and you have things like cooking, but you have also beautiful things like spirituality, clothing, just ideas in general. There's so much richness for multiculturality, but all of that gets completely lost in this fear. And sometimes, and this is my whole point, because I have heard these people's opinions, sometimes it is just scary to be yourself, to openly wear a veil, or to openly behave in certain ways. It becomes a very tiring, if I dare to say, position in which we cannot fully be ourselves, but at the same time, we are never going to be fully accepted either way. Not even the kids that are born here and have spent their whole life in here are deemed part of the culture, so why would we? But at the same time, we're in this struggle to still try to be part of the whole thing. Now, while working with this kid and the siblings of this kid, I actually found myself in such an easy position to be like, actually, by the way, they were from South America. I'm not saying which country, that's all you're going to know. But I was like, hey, we're actually cousins. I'm also from South America. They were like, really? And that's it. That was a beautiful, easy way to create a relationship, not only with the kids, but also with the parents. Because the moment you put yourself out there and are very unapologetic about these things, and more than apologetic, you're very honest and like nonchalantly being like, yeah, we are, so what? That gives peace sometimes. Simply that. Being honest about these aspects just gives a little bit of, okay, maybe it's fine. Okay, maybe I don't have to worry that much about it. Maybe I don't have to fear too much that I'm going to be judged if there's someone out there that maybe kind of understands the situation. Not to say that because you're an immigrant or because I am an immigrant, I fully understand everything that you have been through. Absolutely not. But again, it is a position as an immigrant that unless you're an immigrant, you cannot really understand. You have cases of people that try a bit too hard to want to be part, and they kind of try to behave in certain ways, maybe interact mainly with certain people. And then you notice that when the other people, without even realizing it and without even being in a malice moment, it just comes so natural that they just don't fully accept him. There's always going to be that wall, sadly, especially with older generations. The younger generations are way more inclined to openness. Even my age, sometimes people struggle. People really, really struggle with the idea of non-Italians, basically. When you talk about people, especially people that don't really have any actual knowledge of the immigrant situation, one of the fears is, oh my God, they're going to make us like them. Which No, the amount of moments, especially in recent history, where a community of immigrants has pushed a law or some sort of strong position that everyone else had to do, name them. Please name it because no clue what you're talking about. The Latin American community here, it's actually quite big. There's no law about, I don't know, wearing chanclas at church. The Muslim community has actually been around the world for longer than some people would like to actually admit. There's still no laws about anything in regards to their religion with other contexts of legislation and your daily life. If anything, the only things that immigrants usually try to push is for certain aspects of them to just be okay. You have people from the Sikh community being like, can we wear this? Is it okay? I mean, it's important for just that. Then nothing, you have to, no one has done that. That's really a very harmful depiction, but it is so natural that so many people have that idea in mind. It's crazy, honestly, it is. And I mean, I don't want to dwell into that too much, but you hear it sometimes when the way people make certain comments about other communities or about certain people. You hear that. You hear it in certain words they use or the way they say it. That these ideas are still very, very prevalent. And sadly, these are the people that also vote. If they vote, because there's a lot of people that don't vote. But if they vote, these are the mentality of the people that are voting. Now, in regards to voting, I do want to say a couple of things because this is something that I have found that the education system in general and society in general has a very weird position. Basically, you don't usually study, you can do some legislation, I did some, in the sense that you study maybe how the government is placed. Maybe if you have a president, who is it, and the parliament, if you have one. You know, very general ideas of how the thing works. But I never actually have had a class on how do you vote, or a class on how do you do your taxes, or I don't know, who is your main person that represents you then from the region and then the country. You know, all of these aspects of like everyday life and politics, you don't really study them at school because that is one of those things that for various reasons it's political, so it cannot be taught at school. And at the same time, school is like, I mean, those are very personal things, you should study them at home. um so you mean to tell me that school is not doing that, but at the same time the amount of people that have a household where the adults know the whole system are very, very few, and even know or even vote are very, very few. You see my issue? You see where I'm going? The math ain't nothing. So the moment you are 18, congrats, you can vote. Don't know how. Don't even, sometimes people are not even interested in politics. So, you know, whatever. And as an immigrant, this is something that for me it is important. And it has become slightly more important over the years. Basically, while we were 18, and I had friends, many of which were Italian, because, you know, it was for me understandable to be like, I mean, it is hard for me to understand that. I understand that families don't always go down these roads. I get it, I get it, I get it. It's not like the moment you turn 18, you need to know absolutely everything, be already sure and certain and going to vote. No, no, no. But as time passes by, as years go by, I find myself looking in a way, harsher way, to friends of mine that don't vote. Especially when not only they don't vote, but they have very little interest or even understanding of the political social situation. And this is not to say that you have to. I mean, even I sometimes get overwhelmed and it can be quite a lot. And it's not about being like, you are failed, you are no, 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 it's not about that. But it's about being honest about the fact that voting, it's a right, but it's also kind of a privilege. A privilege that because I'm an immigrant, I don't have. And it's alright if I don't have it because it is one of the rules. The moment as an immigrant, and this is something that I think sometimes people don't really understand, when you're an immigrant and you enter a country, there are rules that you have to follow. We don't just arrive here and do willy-nilly and just act like Italians, it's my no, 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 no. We arrive here and we have to follow a whole line of things, bureaucratic stuff and all sorts of stuff. And there are certain things that we don't have, which is voting, which is interesting enough, fun, interesting not to have when a lot of the laws are made, chosen, and maintained by non-immigrants. But we kind of depend on the voting of others, of Italians, to help us. And sometimes it's not, I'm not talking about helping like giving who knows what type of law do you imagine that we are asking for. Sometimes it's about just, hey, some people have a religion and a celebration on Saturdays instead of Sundays. So can we close our shops on Saturdays instead of Sundays? That's it. That's it. Or it's about, we actually kind of need more ways in which we understand the situation, bureaucratically speaking, because, we go to these places and they just speak Italian. Some people have just arrived and they are struggling with Italian, so no one understands anything. So, hey, can you give us an interpreter, please? And sometimes we're talking about way more heavy stuff, like what are all the exact bureaucratic things that you need, all the papers and the amount of money that you have to pay for being an immigrant, because I'm not here by free. And I don't think people know that. When you're an immigrant, again, I'm speaking in Italy, every year, too, if you're lucky, you have to renew your permit. And every time you renew your permit, you have to pay not only for the whole process, but you sometimes need to pay for some of the documents that are required. And if you want the permit that lasts for a little bit longer, you have to pay more. And then if you want to do your citizenship, you have to pay more. And more you have to pay, usually more documents you have to put on. Now you also need to translate some of the documents from your country of origin. So you need to find the original document in your country. Then you need to translate it. No, wait. First you need to find it. Then you need to basically say that it is legal. Then you need to translate it. Then you need to translate. You need to validate the translation. And then you need to send them to them. And then you have to pay for all of this. And then you might not get it. Every time you do it, every time I go to do my whole thing of the permit, recently did, I had to give my education thing and they didn't recognize it even though it was there. I have to pay and I am never 100% certain that I'm going to have it. They could easily say, nah, no, you can't. In which case, it is a whole new ordeal because you basically have to start from scratch, but you're not really from scratch because you have been here. But bureaucratic procedures are annoying for absolutely everyone. And in the case of us immigrants, usually we have to just follow not only the procedures, but also the decisions that are made by Italians. And most Italians don't even know that we have to do all of these things. So I guess my only hope is that as an immigrant who was able to experience a very particular position from school in my original country and here, as well as working with kids, as well as adults, I actually can work with adults, but I prefer kids. Anyway, I find myself in a position in which I really need to kind of try to analyze all of these aspects, try to put myself in the position of Italians and why do they might have certain ideas in mind, why they might not be too inclined to vote or might not be very interested in it. But at the same time, I need to be very honest with myself about who am I surrounded by and how do I react to these things. Basically, after a certain point, we can be friends, sure, but this is a position in which you are completely denying even a little bit of interested in things that are very important. So how can we be like friends and like actual friends if my whole being here having the right to be in here can be put in doubt because you are just not interested at all in the situation. And at the same time, how it is sometimes not easy to work and give social sanitary services to people that might don't even respect you. And sometimes I don't even know they are fully on being racist and xenophobic in front of you. They're just being honest. But you still have to provide with the service because after all, that's the thing. It is a human right. It is not easy to wanting to be an integrated part of the society you live in and at the same time maintain some of the things that you love about your original culture. Sometimes an asado can make some people annoyed. What's that smell? And why are you making so much noise and whatever? Even though, you're not really late or you're in the open and in your space, so it shouldn't be an issue. But some people take an issue in so many things, and you need to try to. It is a continuous fight again. It is not that personal, even though it kind of is personal. And it is one of those moments in which I need to try to focus my attention on the kids that I work with. Because at the end of the day, as cheesy as it might sound, the kids are the future. They are the ones that not only sometimes have directly parents or they have experiences of immigration, but they are the ones that in the future are going to be not only voting, but are going to be interacting not only with each other, but with many other people. Every day, yes, I am an immigrant, and yes, you can be very racist and xenophobic and whatever, but I'm here to provide a service and I'm trying to do my work the best way that I can. And if I can showcase the kids and they can grow up knowing that one of the teachers that cares for them and that is really interested in their well-being happens to be an immigrant as well as and other teachers are fully on Italians, it doesn't really matter. It's just one experience. Everyone comes from various places and that's not the important thing. The important thing is that we care for them. Because when you feel cared for by who takes care of you, it's just way more easier to be okay and even want to help a little bit more. I mean, one of the reasons why many people are very against immigrants is because they are afraid that the good old, they're gonna take your jobs, they're gonna take your houses and things like that. But usually when you go and see the reason from this is because their own state, their own government, the people that they should have trust, they might have made laws that made it very hard for them to maintain their houses. Or sometimes they might have made decisions that did not help them at all. And they felt very, betrayed by their own government. And it is natural that as humans, we kind of want to find someone to blame. And blaming your own caretaker when you are still under the care can be a very hard thing to do. So it is normal that people behave in that way. So, yeah, it is hard, but it is also important not to take it too personal. And at the same time, I do think some of you, if you're not immigrants, need to kind of work a little bit harder. Come on. So, yeah, I'm sorry if I ramble a bit. I still have a few itches to do, but I think I'm going to do it tomorrow because my eyesight is decreasing by the second. So, yeah, I mean, this was kind of me talking about my own experience. And I want to be very honest and repeat myself because I do think it's important. This is about my experience, my own. It is a very personal thing. I cannot talk for all immigrants. I cannot talk for all Latin American immigrants. I cannot even talk for my relative immigrants. I can't. This experience is a very personal thing, and there are various aspects that are very unique. If anything, I would recommend to all of us to open our eyes. Even if I'm an immigrant, other people's immigrants' experiences and stories are very, very important and very, very valid. If you're not an immigrant, it is also important that we all try to open our ears, open our hearts to all of these things, because at the end of the day, multiculturalism is actually very valuable. We are reaching a point in which, also because of the internet and the communications being so easily accessible for so many people around the world, we have the tools to do better, to learn more, to try to understand a little bit better certain things. Not because you will finally one day fully understand something. Usually, if you are not an immigrant and you're never going to be an immigrant, you're never going to understand that experience. But that's fine. It's not about that. I think we use sometimes the phrase putting yourself in someone else's shoes, and we have a very weird idea of what it means. It's not about fully understanding someone in their totality, because you might never, because of various reasons. But hey, this person, it's an immigrant person, is sad. You're not an immigrant? No, but you understand what sad means, right? There you go. Then you understand that it's not a very nice feeling. And if you want to help, they're telling you, hey, actually, you can do this. That's it. The multicultural world we live in, it's amazing, and I think we need to see way more its actual value. It's like this ruana. It has its value on its own, and it's very nice and has its history, but it's full and it's kind of itchy. So I could absolutely just throw it, not wear it even. I could buy another one, but I don't want to. I actually care for this. So it's better if, I put myself into the time and energy moment to find a solution. I had all the materials and I just had to put everything together. Give it some time, give it some effort. Some changes needed to be done in order for it to reach its full potential. And it's not just for me, it's for anyone that one day might be a little bit cold and might need a ruana that is not itchy. I mean, as with anything, I think it is very important.